Hi everyone, nice to see you all again. Welcome back to the channel, Sounds Right with Sam. Today we're going to talk about everybody's favourite sound in English, which is R. This is of course an important sound, like every other sound in English. It is also a sound that is generally not found in other languages. It's quite uncommon. This sort of sound is what we call a rhotic sound. And a rhotic sound is an R-like sound, although that actually doesn't give you that much information, of course, about what it is. Other languages also have rhotic sounds. I personally don't know of any language that doesn't have any rhotic sounds at all, but the rhotic sounds in other languages are usually quite different to our R. In Russian and Spanish and Japanese, the R-type sound, the rhotic sound, is usually some sort of tap or flap. In Japanese you get ra, ri, ru, re, ro. In Russian you get the same sort of r, although sometimes it might be trilled a little bit into r in some contexts some of the time. Spanish has two rhotics, two different phonemes. It has the trill r as in perro, perro, dog, but it also has pero as in the word but. So all of these languages have their own complexities. But English is quite unusual in that it has a phoneme whose most common allophone, we'll talk about that some other time, is er. So English has a rhotic phoneme that is quite different to the rhotic phonemes of most other languages. At the beginning of a word it's pronounced well, let's say rat, rat, rat. In the middle of a word, borrow, borrow, essentially the same sound, though it comes between two vowels there. In the type of English that I speak, we do not have post-vocalic R. What that means is that if you take a word where you have an R coming after a vowel, as in bar, we don't pronounce that R under normal circumstances. If you take a word like cart, where we have a vowel, then an R, then some sort of consonant, we don't pronounce that R either. Bar, cart. There are exceptions to these rules, but I don't want to talk about them here. So in the type of English that I speak, we get R when it comes before a vowel, immediately in front of a vowel. You can get rat, you can get brat or grit. You can also get things like, for example, street, where you have two consonants before the R in that consonant cluster specifically. Also in, for example, spring, where you get SPR, or in screw, for example, where you get skr, all sticking together, so to speak, into one consonant cluster and giving you skr. Yes, so there are lots of different ways that you can find that R at the beginning of a word, but when it comes after a vowel, we don't pronounce it. Like I said, there are some exceptions, but we'll talk about them some other time. Americans tend to have rhotic accents. My accent is a non-rhotic accent. Americans tend to have rhotic accents. There are exceptions to that rule as well. But Americans will tend to pronounce all of their R's, especially if they have a relatively standard accent. That means an American will say bar, something like that, or cart. They pronounce all of those R's. That's one of the most distinctive things about it. It's one of the most distinctive differences between a standard British accent and a standard American accent. There are American accents where they don't pronounce it, and there are British accents where they do pronounce it. But the standard accents are what I have just described them as being. In America they pronounce it, in Britain we don't. So you might want to decide what sort of accent you want to speak with. One piece of advice I will give you is this. If you want to speak English with a fairly standard British English accent, then do not get into the habit of pronouncing that post-vocalic R as a tap or a flap, depending on how you categorize it. Do not pronounce the word cart as cart, cart. It makes you sound like some very, very stereotypical Slavic English speaker. I've heard that from Russians, for example. Russians who have done pronunciation training with me, and I have told them more than once that they really need to try and stop doing that. And I mean, I'm talking on the basis of one specific student I had here, but he could not stop himself doing it at all. That had gone into his brain, and that was the way he pronounced English. And I would say that that is not a great way of doing it. In the future, we will talk about linking R and intrusive R and other interesting phenomena, but I think that that is enough advice for today. So thanks very much for coming by, and I'll see you next time. Ciao, ciao.